Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey there, welcome to the program. I guess I didn't have enough respect for the anesthesia I got on Tuesday because I'm still. Isn't that weird? You don't think it's anything, and then you end up struggling. I'm just like. I want you to know I ain't my normal self, but I'm gonna give it the old college try and plug along here. Since I've come back, I had Sally carrying me yesterday and my sister the day before, and now I'm all on my own. And I don't know. Thank God Roger Stone got awakened at 6 a.m. Doesn't he look a little like Prince Charles? Is that just me? Every time I look at him, I see sort of like that same sort of, it's a sad face. Have you seen the tattoo of Richard Nixon on Roger Stone's back? It's just beyond belief that anyone would have done that. He's got a big tattoo of Richard Nixon, his hero. So it turns out that there were photographers there when the FBI came to get Stone, and I just don't quite get the theatrics. I mean, you're picking up one old man, and you need 12? 12? SWAT team, they're all, dressed in black with, they look scary. 12 guys fanning out across his front yard to get him. I don't understand that, but then I'm not in the FBI, and then CNN was all agog that they had this video, and you could hear the FBI saying, "FBI, open up." And I'm thinking, so what? I hate when journalists do that sort of inside stuff and put it out there like anyone else gives a damn. I don't know. I'm sorry. You see the mood I'm in. So in an hour, Roger Stone will be, formally charged. This is hardly shocking. But it just keeps getting closer and closer to you know who. And this one clearly ties the Trump campaign to WikiLeaks. It just appears that, I don't know about you, but I can't wait for Mueller to put a final report out. I can't wait to see if he's able to truly connect the dots. I sure as heck hope so. I often think, what would, if I were Donald Trump, that's a stretch for me to get in those shoes, but if I were Donald Trump in the last, 4 or 5 months, wouldn't I be a wreck? Wouldn't I know that things were closing in? Wouldn't I know I was destined to go down in history as the worst president of the United States? Wouldn't I fear that I would end up in jail or my family members end up in jail? How could, I can't imagine. And then he's so seemingly not normal that it could be that he just is capable of extraordinary denial and that he believes what he says, and what he says is generally a lie. So he believes his own. He is. I hope I live long enough to see some definitive biographies. Not that knowing myself, I probably won't be able to subject myself to reading them. But he is such a truly repulsive character. I used to think that, about Nixon, too, for instance, who's so clearly uncomfortable around people. And the sort of herky-jerky movements. He was uncomfortable in his own skin. He had a chip on his shoulder. It seems like such an odd psychological profile for a person that goes into politics, where you have to glad hand and be there with people and make them feel you're their friend and stuff. There's no doubt that Trump saw politics as just another, branding, marketing, money-making endeavor. But what does it say about us that this country elected that man? I don't know how, is it possible to ever live that down? I don't think so. It's a defining event and says a lot about who we are as a nation and a people at this point in time. He was elected. Now, granted, all the Russian interference and the Electoral College stuff and all that didn't get as many votes as, but the fact is, there he is. And that any person who had bothered to do any due diligence at all before casting their vote, that any person would have cast their vote for that repulsive, and knowingly repulsive character. God, till the day I die, I never will understand it. I just will never understand it. But I am so ready for it to be over. I think it's amazing that a single individual backed by 35% of the American people can literally take us all down into the depths like this. It's just sad. And I have like battle fatigue. I can't anymore. I've been thinking for the last few days back to when the midterm elections happened and the Democrats took back the House pretty decisively, and how there really was an effort on the part of many to keep Nancy Pelosi from reacquiring her speaker status. And as we know, that she outmaneuvered those people. And as you look at how she has handled this man in the White House, I don't know that I've seen any political figure handle him better. What do you think? And she has told, this who blinks first moment with the shutdown, she is as steadfast as a person can be. He's blinked twice, actually. What were the people who thought that there was someone better than Nancy Pelosi? Why is it that a woman who had been such an extraordinarily successful Speaker of the House was facing serious opposition to a leadership position. And for those who were, well, she was 80, whatever she is. She's old. Yeah, so, you know what old can mean? Wise. She certainly doesn't appear to be unenergetic. She's old and wise and wily and unflappable. And there's not a man or woman in that house that would do a better job than she is doing right now. Chuck Schumer, on the other hand, doesn't exactly impress me. And yet there was no doubt that he would get the Democratic leadership position in the Senate. But for the woman who had done so much, she's challenged. And I think it's fascinating how Trump does not disparage her like he disparages every other person he comes up against. He really doesn't. The closest he comes to disparagement is by simply calling her Nancy, right? But there's no adjective in front of the Nancy. There's no demeaning her. Oh, wow, Barbara, thank you. Breaking news, the FAA says it is halting flights into New York's LaGuardia airport due to air traffic control staffing issues. Oh boy. Good for them. Good for them. Mm-hmm. Well, when you start inconveniencing the folks that, with the bucks and commerce, something's gotta move. So good for them. I mean, the FAA's job is to ensure that our air travel is safe and secure, and they cannot do it now. That's good. We have a caller. Ugh. I'm glad. Hello, caller. Go ahead, please.
Hello, it's me again.
Hi, Clarence.
Clarence.
Yeah.
Just this morning, I wrote a little song that's based on the walls of Jericho. Want to hear it?
Sure. Of course.
Pelosi fought a battle with Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Pelosi fought a battle with Donald Trump, and the wall came a-tumbling down. You may talk about your men of the Senate. You may talk about your men of the House, but there's none like good old Pelosi in a battle with Donald Trump. Pelosi fought a battle with Donald Trump.
Nope.
That's it.
Well, exactly what I was thinking. Is she not something else?
Exactly. And something else she's doing that I noticed is taking some of those young newcomers and putting them in positions
right.
of power.
Right.
And so she knows what she's doing.
She sure does.
She could take those young freshmen and just give them some backroom little bit of
right.
power. She put them on serious committees.
Yeah, really.
And I said, man, is she smart? She knows what she's doing.
She is something else. Have you seen that pic? She was meant to be who she ended up being. I mean, with her dad being the mayor of Baltimore, and then how she, as a young girl, was in the White House with President Kennedy. I wonder if
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I wonder if he made a pass at her. That'd be interesting. Yeah.
I did find an old political ad of hers when she was just her first political ad, which was really good when she was running for Congress. That was really good. I think it was from it was from '88 because I was searching for an old, my favorite Biden speech ever from '88, and that came up as a suggestion on YouTube. And let me watch this, and I went, wow.
Yeah.
Even as a young woman, she was good.
Really. So she got, she was studying essentially power and politics her entire life because of simply the home she grew up in. And boy, not only is she smart, it's just her coolness that she just seems unflappable.
Yeah.
I love her. So anyway, LaGuardia is shut down. That's huge.
Yeah, that I only caught the end of that as I was calling.
Yeah.
That is huge.
That's huge.
This is the end of the stalemate. The Republicans are going to have to override any possible veto.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but the Donald's going to have to just flat out lose this fight to Nancy. That's it. It's going to be over. Don't you think? Yeah. It's got to be. Well, hey,
there's but you never know.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, there's one of those things where it seems obvious, but Donald Trump is in the White House.
Yeah, right.
Never thought that would have happened.
Exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, do you think I came across a quote, and these guys around Trump think they're so. Do you think they have ever read Machiavelli and stuff like that, or have any idea how in history how the best minds have what they have put forth as the way to be a strong leader? I mean, I'm sure. I mean, obviously Donald Trump never read Machiavelli.
You know what? I'm going to go. It's not going to be a tangent because I was in an argument on Facebook with this guy who's a money man. He's an investor. You know, he's a money manager. And I'm winning the argument, and he gives me all this bona fide pseudo colati from this and pseudo, and all of his grades and all that stuff.
Yeah,
I said, but dude, you went to school to be, to be a money manager. That doesn't mean that you understand everything.
Uh-huh.
I said, if my transmission goes, I'm not going to go to somebody with a PhD in brain surgery. I'm going to the mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what these guys. He has a bunch of money men behind him, guys who've spent their lives accumulating wealth. They weren't concerned about anything else.
No.
So do I think they read that stuff? No.
No.
Yeah, they're really good at making money, and that's it.
Well, I got to tell you, because there's a great quote I came across from Machiavelli. And it's exactly what he's saying is, do not do what these idiots are doing. Here's what Machiavelli said. I do not believe that divisions purposely caused can ever lead to good. So Machiavelli did not subscribe to divide and conquer. Divisions purposely caused can never lead to good. I was surprised by that.
I'm surprised too.
Anyway,
because
there you have
one
it.
One of my ongoing themes of life is the bad ideas that separate people into groups. From race, religion, nationality, ethnicity.
Right.
So this I've been saying this for 30 years now.
Probably.
And it's similar. Yeah, it can't end well as long as people think of themselves as anything but human beings.
I know.
There's
it's so true, and it seems like it's so obviously true, and yet human nature, I think, gets in the way all the time.
Yeah, tribalism.
Tribalism.
That's what we were talking about last week. We were talking about the instincts of men. You know what I mean? It's our natural instinct is to be tribal, but we have that prefrontal cortex that we can fight against it, or base instincts.
Yes.
So
imagine that. You can fight against your base instincts.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, thanks. So,
right.
I mean, I don't know if you're going to be the next George Gershwin or anything, but I thank you for the...
Well, I could have did a better voice, but that's not funny if I really sing.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, it sounded okay to me. Thanks, Clarence.
Okay, all right.
Bye. Bye. I want to just throw some stuff out here. I saw in the morning paper, local, that a Pittsburgh bookstore has been nominated as one of 5 bookstores in the country by Publishers Weekly, which would be the guys who would that's the trade organization, and they are going to give an award for the best bookstore in the country. And one of these 5 is going to get it, and one of them is my favorite bookstore. And I was so thrilled to see this, and it gives me the opportunity to tell you that if you have never been to Classic Lines Bookstore in Squirrel Hill, treat yourself. It is a place where you can literally spend an afternoon, where you can sit in a comfortable chair and read, surrounded by it's just a wonderful place. And the guy who opened it, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, is named Dan Iddings. And if he doesn't have a book you want, he'll get it for you real fast. So bookstores are one of those things that I think we all, people who love books, we all need to support. And these kinds of independent small bookstores, he opened it after there was a Barnes & Noble in Squirrel Hill on Murray Avenue, and it went down. And then there was, I think, another one in East Liberty that went down. And he thought, there's a need here. And Squirrel Hill is a very literate neighborhood. It's a lot of folks in that neighborhood who read a lot. So he opens up this little bookstore on Forbes Avenue on the main drag there in Squirrel Hill. And I just love this place from the minute I first walked in it. To browse in, to get information in, to get a book you want, please stop enriching Amazon. Please. I'm begging you. You know, if convenience, if never having to leave your home is what we value, and I think it is, convenience and cheap prices. That's what America values. And those values have resulted in killing off so many wonderful community stores. And for bookshops to be making a comeback. And he's doing great business. And every year he's done more and more. So there's a hunger for that. And it occurred to me that maybe a lot of folks don't know it's there. There are independent bookstores around town. I'm acquainted with most, but this one, and granted, it is closest to my house, but I just love this one. I just love it, and the helpfulness of Dan and the people in it. So we got to all be rooting for him because it would be fantastic. I mean, just being named already one of the 5 best bookstores. It's just it ain't big. It ain't big. But anything you may need, it's in there. I failed to note the passing days and days and days ago of a wondrous writer, and I want to do that now. When I read the obituary, I was reminded of a book that I had read of his that I had so loved. And so, again, speaking of bookstores and books, if you are looking for a wonderful, wonderful book, this one's a memoir, Russell Baker's Growing Up. It is about his childhood in the Depression. And he grew up to be a reporter, excuse me, and a columnist for the New York Times. And just a wry, wonderful observer of life. But if you are looking for, I mean, really, a great read, and you never read it when it came out in 1982, and you missed it, please treat yourself to Growing Up, a 1982 memoir about his, I mean, it's just incredible. I think it won him a Pulitzer Prize. He had another one too. An incredible writer, a clearly wonderful man. You know how some people, when they write, you can just you just sort of fall in love with them. Good people and smart. And there was one little line. I'm sorry about my voice, guys. There was one line in the obituary that I just so loved. He was working as a reporter, as a regular, ordinary, old reporter. When he was first hired at the New York Times, he was covering the State Department. He was bored out of his mind. Then he was sent over to do Congress, and he liked that a little bit more because there were characters there. There aren't a lot of characters in the State Department, but in Congress there were. So at least he had a little bit more fun writing about Congress. And in his reporting, he would make his very Baker-esque observations, sardonic, wry observations about power in D.C. And then he covered the 1956 presidential campaign. He covered the 1960 campaign with Kennedy. And but he was just feeling like, this is not quite what I want to do. And he had a moment. You know, these things happen to us all. There's a moment. And here's how he put it. One day, well, this is how the obituary writer put it. One day, he found himself on a bench outside a closed meeting of a Senate committee. And here's what happened to him. He's sitting out there waiting for some senators to come out and so he can question them. He's 37 years old at the time. And he said, all of a sudden it occurred to me, what the heck am I doing waiting out here for somebody to come out and lie to me? And that was the end for him. So he ended up heading into column writing. But seriously, if you're looking for a good read, there's nothing better than Growing Up. It's history, it's personal, it's warm, it's smart, it's everything you would want in a book to read on a cold January or February day. So just sending that your way. Have I mentioned another memoir that I am just like freaking out about now? I read it recently, and I want to also suggest that you take that one on too. this is a memoir of a woman's childhood, closer to our time, and it's called Educated, and maybe you've heard about it. It is mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing in a million ways. Mind-blowing in the lives that people survive, the childhoods that people survive, the obvious resiliency and strength of a human being. Not all, but some. And this woman, it's mind-blowing. And I read a review of it, and I thought, that sounds really good. And then I saw that Barack Obama put it on his year-end list of books you gotta read. And so that gave me the push, because I think Barack generally has a pretty good, we tend to like the same kind of books. So there's another one. 2 memoirs for you, very different in tone. Hers is so much more harrowing and almost unbelievable. You can't quite believe that in this country there are people living as she lived. It's amazing. So those are my 2 little books for you to read and to give yourself much enjoyment. Okay? Something else. I just got little things here. I'm going to... What was the thing about... excuse me. Okay, so we were talking about Nancy Pelosi just cleaning Trump's clock. And Mitch McConnell's clock, for that reason. You know, she's just masterful. Mistressful. But there was a piece written by Michelle Goldberg about misogyny in politics in this country that is very sobering. And I had not seen the specific numbers that she trots out in this, but I want to, because it takes us back to something I was talking about earlier, like how could this country elect that repulsive and clearly not up to the job man over a woman that was deemed by many to be not particularly their cup of tea, not particularly likable, whatever, but so clearly smart, capable, and knowledgeable. and America given, here's a woman, all right, so you don't like her, you don't want to date her, you don't want whatever, it's okay. But man, is she qualified or what? And then this snake oil salesman, this crook, this disparager of his superiors in every way, this misogynistic, repulsive human being. And America puts him in the White House. There was a political scientist who was very keen on seeing how this 2016 election would play out with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And so he made an effort to poll specific registered voters. He just kept it in some registered voters in New Jersey. And he interviewed them on more than one occasion. And here's how he set up what he wanted. He wanted to sort of try to pinpoint how misogyny or fear of powerful women could impact this election. And so he divided his study participants into two groups. And in one of the groups, he first held, he talked to them about what he was, they always sort of flim-flammed the people, saying, he told this group that in an increasing number of American households, women out-earn the men. And he asked everyone in that group, is that true of your household? And he expected, this is what's interesting, he fully expected many of the men to lie. The point of the question that he asked them was to get them thinking, put in their heads, that women were gaining power, women were getting better jobs, that some women out-earned their husbands. He wanted to plant that idea in their head. And it's not like he was planting something that's not true. It is true. And then later, there was another group who were not asked about that and whether or not they out-earned their wives. And the men who were prepped with the question about money and women favored Trump when asked by 8 points. When the group that had not been told, women are out earning a lot of men, well, how's it doing in your house? The group that didn't get that little preamble voted for Hillary Clinton by 16 points. Put in their heads, women are out earning men, and that group goes, wow, to Trump. And the political scientist who did the report ended up writing a piece on it called Emasculation and the 2016 election. And he said, in essence, the threat of losing the traditional norm of men as primary breadwinners led a lot of men in the 2016 election to support Donald Trump. And there's all kinds of other things where he said, they said they even controlled for factors like political ideology, support for, no matter how they sliced it, support for Trump correlated with higher levels of sexism. In fact, of hostile sexism. The view that women are not just different than men, but in fact inferior to men. So, now we see there are 3 or 4 Democratic women already with their hats in the ring. And a lot of Democrats are now scared to run a woman because of the fact that these men haven't changed a bit. They're still out there. And it's why also that there is this record gender divide in voting patterns between Democrats and Republicans. And here, the guy who did this study says this: I'm actually concerned that the same dynamics of gender role threat that we saw play out in 2016 could easily repeat itself in 2020. The perception, in fact, that men have that they're being discriminated against hasn't gone away. In fact, has increased under Trump. And he thinks that if Democrats nominate a woman in 2020, it likely would cost them a couple of points in the general election. So they'd be handicapped to start with because of all these sexist men. However, what Michelle Goldberg points out is, yeah, but you know what else has happened since Trump became president? Women. Women have been aroused. And there's a lot of female anger out there. And for every terrified, emasculated male, there might be one or even two women who can counteract their votes. It's just something, I mean, it's so depressing to realize. You know, I know black parents will tell their kids, you know, you're going to have to be twice as good, 10 times as good as the little white kids to get ahead. It's just the way it's stacked. And for women, too, there is this true handicap in their gender, because there's an awful lot, and it's not just men, and we've talked about this before. There are women who are such sexists in terms of other women who would never vote for a woman. They're the women who totally defer to the traditional role of men as superior to them, especially in wielding power. So it's not as if it's just men, guys. I've always joked that when men finally screw things up totally, I said that about City Paper, actually, finally appointing a woman as the editor here. I said they do it when the place is almost, you know, in the can. They wait until the men have so messed everything up that then they decide, well, I guess we can let a woman try. They give it to the woman when the opportunity for success is definitely less. And I did not know, but in this column, Michelle Goldberg says that there's a phenomenon in business called the glass cliff, which I had never heard of. The glass cliff, in which companies in crisis turn to women to clean up messes made by men. And here's somebody in the Harvard Business Review's quote, "Only if male leaders have maneuvered an organization into trouble is a switch to a female leader preferred." And so it is possible that Trump will have done so much damage by the time of the next election that, in fact, more and more Americans might be willing to let a woman try to save us. Here is something I came across that just blew my mind. You know, there's so many things in our system that are so unfair and need to be fixed, or need fixed, as they say around here. But they never will be, because there are whole bunches of people who like things to be unfair. And let me find this. This has to do with the population of Washington, D.C., and how it has, in fact, gone way up. it's gone up enough that the District of Columbia, our nation's capital, has a population larger than 4 entire states of this country. The population of the District of Columbia has more people in it than Wyoming, than Vermont, than Arkansas, Alaska that is, and North Dakota. But stop and think that each one of those states has representation in the Senate of the United States, has 2 senators. That would be 8 senators all together representing states that have fewer people than the District of Columbia, which doesn't get represented, really. There ain't no senator from D.C. There ain't no congressperson from D.C. There is a D.C. rep that does not have the powers. How do we allow in this country to have a situation where hundreds of thousands of Americans do not get represented in our federal government? And yet, these other places that are overwhelmingly white, right? D.C. is overwhelmingly black. These 4 states are overwhelmingly white, and they've got senators and Congress people representing them. How is that tolerable? How is anybody able to argue that that is, obviously it's not fair, but it seems so anti-American, the very idea of a democratic republic. How could we have set things up so that these hundreds of thousands of people would have no representation? And yet these other lily white Wyoming and Vermont and North Dakota we really need a constitutional convention. We really, it's unbelievable. Wow. Chris writes, just wanted to let you know. How do you people keep track of dates like this? I don't. It's been 8 years today that Doug Hirth died. For those of you who don't know, Doug Hirth was a colleague of mine and a unique talk radio voice in Pittsburgh. And the fact that he had so many listeners who actually note the anniversary of his death. He was that loved, and yet he just, Chris says, I can't believe it's been that long. I miss hearing his show every day. It wasn't like any other show. That's for sure. She says, I can still hear Doug and Lawrence, and they're both gone, singing the theme song to All in the Family. Lawrence sang the Edith part. Yeah, he was just hysterical. So Doug Hirth is gone, but now we get freaking Wendy Bell, says Chris. Why are we being punished? In honor of Doug, hello, I must be going. He always ended his show with that Marx Brothers song. God, and I never know it. Hello, I must be going. I came to say I cannot stay. I must be going. Yeah. Well. So that's the way it is. What else? I just got little things here and there. A lot of you have sent me this information about the fact that Mo Rocca, who I only encounter on the NPR quiz show that I'm blanking on Saturdays. But he's also, I guess, Mo Rocca is on one of the network's shows in the morning, and a lot of you have told me because you figure I'll love this, and I obviously Mo Rocca, it turns out, really loves obits, because I do too. And he's on CBS News Sunday morning, and he's starting up a new podcast. Just tell those of you who might not have seen it, called Mobituaries. And he looks at the deaths of, not necessarily the best known people, and also not necessarily people, but the deaths of ideas. Jeez, the deaths of social movements and things like that. And it says here that his first episode is going to focus on Vaughn Meader. Now, if you know who Vaughn Meader is, that definitely dates you. Vaughn Meader was a comic, I guess, who looked a bit like John F. Kennedy, looked enough like him, and nailed the delivery and voice of JFK, that as soon as JFK became president, Vaughn Meader was like the comedian of the era. And his career was killed with Kennedy's assassination. Of course. When Kennedy was assassinated, Vaughn Meader's career was ended. And I'm not aware that he did much of anything after that. But boy, I mean, an awful lot of houses, including the one I grew up in, certainly had Vaughn Meader records. Jonathan says, if you do a search for Doug Hirth on YouTube, you'll find lots of great stuff. So a lot of shows are there. And if you need a Doug fix, or even if you're curious about what the heck it was he did, he lives on YouTube. So. Oh God, guys. I don't know. I have all this stuff here, and I look at it and I think I don't want to talk about Wilbur Ross, our Commerce Secretary, who said, when told that, people work for the FAA and others, I mean, they're actually going to food banks. And Wilbur Ross, who is worth hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, said, I don't really quite understand the absolute tone deafness of this Trump administration to the lives of Americans. These are people who only know other millionaires. They only know millionaires, billionaires, and people in power. And they have no, obviously, empathy, no ability to comprehend how missing a paycheck impacts a regular human being. Somebody who hasn't spent their lives accumulating more than they need, more than their share, and who can never get enough. And as Nancy Pelosi says, it's that let them eat cake kind of, let them eat loans. He told them tell them to go get a loan. Why can't they just go get a loan? And then it turns out that the credit union that is part of his own Wilbur Ross's department, the Commerce Department, they have a credit union. They are offering loans. Shutdown loans of up to $5,000. But guess what the interest rate is? 9%. So Wilbur Ross on his turf says, well, I don't think I'll get loans. Yeah, they might have to pay a little bit of interest. 9% interest to secure the money that is theirs? They have to pay to get the money that is owed them? Yeah, well, why don't they go get a loan? Because people like Wilbur Ross with all his money, that's how they operate. They get loans all the time. You know, they're leveraging whole big hunks of money left and right and then making more and more and more and more of it. And Wilbur Ross wouldn't know that Bank of America, that Citigroup, that J.P. Morgan, that Wells Fargo, they don't offer personal loans at all anymore. They aren't interested in little people. Those four huge national banks, those are the four biggest banks in the country, they'll only loan money to the likes of Wilbur Ross. You? It's something. It's something. Unbelievable. Okay, and then there's just one other little thing I've been carrying around forever, but you've probably already seen it. There is a significant variation in fertility rates around our country. And generally speaking, almost everywhere in the country, there ain't enough babies being born. We are not replacing the dead. And that is certainly true of Pennsylvania. We've always known that. But it turns out it's true of 48 states now. Only South Dakota and Utah. Utah I get, because it's Mormons, right? But South Dakota, what the heck is going on in South Dakota? I don't know. Those are the only two. And if you want to see people, our population growing, unfortunately, this is why you got all these racists out there now, because the babies being born are not white, in large part. Hispanic women have the highest fertility rates in the country. Black women in 12 states are the highest. White women do not reach the level required to sustain the population in any state. I'm just saying. And I'm not sure the impact that has, but it has an impact. Only South Dakota and Utah have birth rates high enough to sustain their current populations. Everybody else is going to be losing. Last year, the number of babies born in this country was the lowest since 1987. Is that because we powerful women emasculated all the guys? I have no idea what happened, but there it is. Okay, guys, I'm going to fold the tent about a minute early here because I'm just beat. Forgive me. And I hope to regain my energy next over the weekend and come back finally with a little more oomph, because my oomph done got up and went. I really am dragging. So thank you for listening to a less than energetic me today. And if all goes as it is to go, we will actually be here 5 days next week. Amazing. Have a great weekend. Stay warm. Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.